Hello everyone. Today we're going to be going over the life of Sam Walton, the guy who built Walmart from nothing and completely changed the way the world shops. Sam Walton grew up during the Great Depression, working on a farm with his family, and he started really with next to nothing. But with this just insane work ethic and a philosophy of serving others instead of serving yourself, he was able to build one of the largest retail stores ever. And on top of that, he really redefined what it really meant to be an entrepreneur. This video is for anyone who has big dreams and for anyone who wants to build something that lasts, that withstands the test of time. Sam's story isn't just about business, but it's a story of humility and grit and a philosophy of serving others, and it shows us how we can be the best version of ourselves. So whether you're an aspiring entrepreneur or whether you just want a feel-good triumph story, Sam's life has lessons that we can all learn from. So I think that's it for the intro. Let's dive into the life of Sam Walton.
Life can be much broader once you discover one simple fact.
I've lost my mind on this game, yeah? Like Vincent Van Gogh.
Every set that I did and more weights that I lifted, I get one step closer to turning that vision into reality.
Offer me money, offer me power, I don't care.
Dedicated his life to his art and lost his mind in the process.
Everything around you that you call life was made up by people that were no smarter than you.
We're actually going to be taking a lot of quotes out of Sam's autobiography, Sam Walton, Made in America. And let me tell you, this book is one of the best biographies I have ever read. His whole philosophy, his work ethic, everything about Sam is absolutely incredible. He is truly one of a kind, and the way he's able to tell his story is in a way where it teaches you how you should go about your own life in a way. It really drags out the lessons out of them, and these lessons that replay over and over again throughout all of history. The story talks about how he was put on the Forbes list for one of the richest people in America. I think it's actually the richest person, and it's very surprising for him because not a lot of people knew him at this point. So suddenly now people know who he is, and reporters flock to his hometown, they flock to where he is, and they're all trying to get a piece of Sam Walton. The weird thing is though that Sam acts like an everyday normal person. He doesn't act like a billionaire, and all these reporters are surprised when they find him wearing a baseball cap, or when they see that he gets his haircut at the barber shop, or when they see his truck and it's got dog cages in the back for his dogs. Sam is just a normal guy, and he's always been that way, and this is something that surprised a lot of the reporters that went after him when he just acted like any other person. And so he begins to talk about his philosophy towards money. He says, "No questions about it, a lot of my attitude towards money stems from growing up during a pretty hard scrabble time in our country's history, the Great Depression, and this heartland area we come from out here, Missouri, Oklahoma, Kansas, Arkansas, was hit hard during the Dust Bowl era." And Sam's childhood was actually quite rough. You see, during the Great Depression, there was a lot of economic suffering, mainly with farmers. Farmers were some of the people that were getting hit the hardest during this era, and his dad was actually one of the people who had to go and repossess farms from these farmers. So the farmer takes out a loan from the bank, and if they can't pay back that loan, then the bank takes back their farm and they send someone like Sam's dad to go get it for them. Sam is seeing this as a kid, and he's seeing these good, honest, hardworking people get their land, everything taken away from them because of economic suffering. And so this sort of fuels Sam ever since he was a kid. He says, "I also started selling magazine subscriptions, probably as young as 7 or 8 years old, and I had paper routes from the 7th grade all the way through college. I raised and sold rabbits and pigeons too, nothing really unusual for country boys of that era. I learned from a very early age that it was important for us kids to help provide for the home, to be contributors rather than just takers." And so you can see already from a young age, he's already trying to make money, he's already working, he's already got these little side hustles, and he continues to say, "One thing my mother and dad shared completely was their approach to money. They just didn't spend it." And then there's a quote from his brother who says, "People can't understand why we're still so conservative. They make a big deal about Sam being a billionaire and driving an old pickup truck or buying his clothes at Walmart or refusing to fly first class. It's just the way we were brought up." And so I love this story because it's just these two billionaires, and they're just normal people. They show the world that they're one of them, and they really are, aside from the fact that they have $1 billion. Another thing Sam Walton displays as a kid is just this extreme competitiveness, this drive to win. He says, "My competitive nature was such that I saw his success and admired it. I didn't envy it, I admired it. I said to myself, maybe I will be as successful as he is someday." And so this is really beautiful because he's very competitive, obviously, but he doesn't let his competitiveness get in the way of his relationships. He talks a lot about the difference of envy and admiration, where people who are envious will look at someone and they'll say, "Oh, that should be me. That should be me. Why is it not?" And people who are envious sort of blame the world for their position. They blame the world that they are not where they're supposed to be. While Sam over here talks about how he admires these rich people. He admires these people who made something out of their lives, and because they did something, I can do the same. And so you see this in Sam's philosophy as well from a young age. He's extremely competitive, and then he also has this belief that he can do what other people have done. And you're going to see this a lot in Sam's life, these two traits, the competitiveness and the admiration. So be on the lookout for that, and be on the lookout for that in your own life, because, I mean, obviously that's what we're doing. We're studying the great people of history to learn from them, to learn from their successes and failures. This philosophy towards money is also something that would grow into his adult life, and he would take it really to the extreme. He says, "As long as I have anything to do with it, and I'm confident this attitude will last at least another generation, most of that Walmart stock is staying right where it is. We don't need the money. We don't need to buy a yacht. And thank goodness we never thought we had to go out and buy something, anything, like an island. We just don't have those kinds of needs or ambitions, which wreck a lot of companies when they get along in years. Here's the thing. Money has never meant that much to me, not even in the sense of keeping score. If we had enough groceries and a nice place to live, plenty of room to keep and feed my bird dogs, a place to hunt, a place to play tennis, and the means to get the kids good educations, that's rich. No question about it, and we have it." And that is so beautiful. That quote right there is so beautiful, because we live in a world of surplus, and we live in a world full of extravagant things. We think we need the coolest car to be happy, the coolest clothes, the nicest watch, the most beautiful women for some even. While Sam is over here and he says what makes him rich is playing tennis and getting his kids a good education and going hunting with his dogs. These are the things that bring him happiness. These are the things that bring him joy. And so he's not working for the most amount of money, and he's not working for any sort of status. And I think this is one thing that makes Sam, one, probably a lot happier than the general entrepreneur, but two, something that just makes him very unique from a lot of these other great people of history. Sam has that unique and true sense of humility that really allows him to operate under the philosophy that he operates under, which is the idea of serving others instead of yourself. It's also interesting how he describes how spending excess money on yachts or islands is how some companies go bankrupt. And obviously, Walmart still isn't even close to bankruptcy, so they've kept that philosophy. And the thing about really, really great people is that most of the times they're not really driven by money, at least. Most of them, it is mission that drives them. One of the early Walmart partners, Charlie Baum, says, "I've known Sam since his first store in Newport, Arkansas, and I believe that money is, in some respects, almost immaterial to him. What motivates the man is the desire to absolutely be on top of the heap. It is not money. Money drives him crazy now." His question to me at 6 a.m. not long ago was, "How do you inspire a grandchild to go to work if they know they'll never have a poor day in their life?" Wow, so repetition that money is not what motivates him. Instead, it's one, the wanting to help others and serve others, but two, it's also that competitive instinct to be on top, and it's also that fear driving him away from not wanting to be poor. I was on a podcast recently and we were discussing what motivates people, what's the driving motivator behind people, and what we discussed was that there's always two sorts of motivators. One you could call a more positive motivator, and the other one is a more fear-based, perhaps negative motivator. And for Sam, obviously, he wants to help his family. He wants to serve the community and the people around him. But he's also got this fear from never wanting to go back to his childhood again, where he watched people struggle and have their farms taken away. It's that fear mixed in with the upward aiming order that really drives people to the maximum extent. And so if you can pay attention to what motivates you in your life, both the negative and the positive, you can put those motivators in the right place and truly build something great. Especially this fear of saving money is really what made Walmart the great company that it is. It says, "Now, when it comes to Walmart, there's no two ways about it. I'm cheap. I think it's a real statement that Walmart never bought a jet until after we were approaching $40 billion in sales and expanded as far away as California and Maine, and even then, they had to practically tie me up and hold me down to do it. A lot of what goes on these days with high-flying companies and these overpaid CEOs who are really just looting from the top and aren't watching out for anybody but themselves really upsets me. It's one of the main things wrong with American business today. Every time a Walmart spends $1 foolishly, it comes right out of the customer's pockets. Every time we save them $1, that puts us one more step ahead of the competition, which is where we always plan to be. And wow, that is fantastic because that is everything that made Walmart great. Keep your costs insanely low as you possibly can, and then create the best possible experience for the customer. If you can just master those two principles, your business or your life will be a giant success from an economics viewpoint. Because when you create the best possible experience for the customer, then every customer who goes to you will come back to you. And not only that, but they'll also recommend you. And then if you can operate that way while at the same time keeping your expenses and your costs insanely low, you'll be able to go past any depression that comes your way. So let's continue a bit with Sam's childhood, middle school and high school. What was he really like? One of the things that he always had was ambition. He says, "I don't know what causes a person to be ambitious, but it is a fact that I have been overblessed with drive and ambition from the time I hit the ground." So it's interesting that he says he's been blessed to be given ambition. I think ambition is something that everyone has at least a little bit of because everyone has some sort of goals. But some people just have this drive within them, this urge to explore the world and to find out everything that they possibly can, and just this energy that's unmatchable. And Sam Walton was one of these people. This goes very well with the next thing Sam is about to talk about, in which he says, "Mother must have been a pretty special motivator because I took her seriously when she told me I should always try to be the best I could at whatever I took on. So I always have pursued everything I was interested in with a true passion, some would say obsession, to win. I've always held the bar pretty high for myself. I've set extremely high personal goals." Wow. So Sam is just one of a kind. He sets the bar high, he sets goals, and he pursues something with everything that he has. And this is a big problem for a lot of people today, where they're scattered in a million directions. They want to start a business, and they want to learn physics, and they want to also go to college and get this degree and this job position at this place. But a lot of the people who get ahead very fast are the people who choose one thing and they just become absolutely obsessed and driven towards that one thing. I'm not saying that you have to cut out all these other things, but let yourself become obsessed by one thing in particular, one thing that really calls out to you, and sacrifice at least one other thing for the thing that you chose. It's really the sacrificial gesture that gives that thing value anyway. So for example, I want to make movies. Now, I've also thought about what it would be like to be a stock trader. I love stocks and I've always wanted to work on Wall Street, but the two dreams don't exactly match up. And so I've sacrificed that way of living, the move to New York, the wanting to be the stock guy, for this new version of myself, which is the director, the artist, the founder of Munio Studios. And so it's that sacrifice that led me to become obsessed by movies. It doesn't mean I can't trade in my free time or look at stocks when I have some extra time here and there, but at the end of the day, I am obsessed with movies, and I let that obsession drive me. So after you're obsessed with something, you obviously have to believe in yourself. Sam says, "It never occurred to me that I might lose. To me, it was almost as if I had a right to win. Thinking like that often seems to turn into a sort of a self-fulfilling prophecy." Wow. So belief always comes before action. This is something I've actually been exploring quite deeply recently. You need to have a belief in yourself that no one can take away from you. That no matter what the world says, no matter what family member, relationship, or anyone around you says, that you have the utmost 100% confidence in yourselves. This is something that every great person had. And it's this confidence that sort of shapes the world around you. It's this vision that molds the world around you into your actual belief. It's this belief that guides your actions, which turns into actual reality. And so it's sort of like this paradox where you have to believe you're the best before you're the best. There are so many entrepreneurs who talk about this, so many actors, and you have to have that self-belief in yourself, that confidence. And if you believe that, then you'll take the actions required to actually get the desired result that you want. All right, so now we're getting to the point where Sam Walton is in college, and he's just like the guy. He's the guy, the college guy. He's like the head of the frat. He's the head of multiple organizations. And he's just like, the top college guy. And he has this trick that he does, which I think it's really interesting because it's quite simple and it sort of really encapsulates who Sam is. He says, I learned early on that one of the secrets to campus leadership was the simplest thing of all. Speak to people coming down the sidewalk before they speak to you. And so it's so simple. But he says it all comes down to little things like that. And so it's nice to remember that it's these little simple habits that build who you are as a character. It's the simple actions that you take every day that make you who you are. It's how you spend your time. Cliff Weitzman, the founder of Speechify, actually has this thing where every time he's walking on the sidewalk or at the mall or in any public place, he always looks at the stranger who's walking by him, makes eye contact, and smiles. And so if you just think about how many people will feel so uncomfortable to even just do that, to look someone in the eyes and smile. Most of the times we make eye contact with someone and we immediately look away in awkwardness or in shyness. And it's just like, why? Why not smile at them? Why not meet this person who could be a potential asset in your network? Why not meet this person just to meet the person because you want to meet some new person? And so Sam is constantly meeting people just by doing this, by stepping over this little hump that society deems as normal and just talking to strangers. I think this is quite a powerful concept. It's so simple, and yet it can have exponential returns in your life. Sam also had a paper route when he was a child, and he continues this into college, but in college, he steps it up a level. He says, I had continued to throw a newspaper route all through high school and in college. I added a few more route, hired a few helpers, and turned it into a pretty good business. I made about $4,000 to $5,000 a year, which at the end of the Depression was fairly serious money. So this really just shows his entrepreneurial drive and really just shows how action-oriented Sam is. He has something that he does. He has this newspaper route, and he begins outsourcing, hiring other people to help him with it. And he's able to do this because he knows so many people. And this is his first real business where he actually outsources to workers, and he makes a good amount of money doing this. After college, he gets a job at JCPenney, and the way he describes this job, I'll just read it to you because you'll know exactly what I mean. Maybe I was born to be a merchant, maybe it was fate. I don't know about that kind of stuff, but I know this for sure. I loved retail from the very beginning, and I still love it today. Not that it all went smooth right off the bat. And so joining JCPenney right after college is sort of like this epiphany that he has. And a lot of great people throughout history have had this epiphany. A good example would be Arnold when he first started lifting weights. The first day he started lifting weights, he loved it. He loved the sound of the metal. He loved the people in there. He loved everything about it, and he did it for his entire life. And so I think it's good for people to find this in their life, to have this epiphany moment where they finally realize what they're meant to do. Like I said for myself, I didn't find movies immediately. I liked stocks and I like psychology and I like physics, but at the end of the day, I just had this moment where I have to be in the movie industry. I have to make movies. And so by trying multiple things, at a certain point, you get this epiphany, and that obsession really comes and crawls onto you at that point. And so that's what happened for Sam Walton with retailing. And it's really good that he got this JCPenney job because it's here where he meets one of his first mentors, which is Duncan Majors. Here's what he says about him. He says, his secret was that he worked us from 6:30 in the morning until 7 or 8 o'clock at night. On Sundays, when we weren't working, we would all go out to his house. There were about 8 of us, all men, and we would talk about retailing, of course, but we also played ping pong or cards. It was a 7-day job. Wow, so this is great, and it reminds me a little bit of David Ogilvy when he's talking about this chef that was just this absolute boss chef guy who worked all day and who was the best of the best at his craft. And this is sort of who Duncan Majors was for Sam Walton. And you see this pattern with great people that they're constantly seeking out mentors. They're constantly seeking out people who they can learn from. And when you do find that person, that wants to help you and that you can sort of model your life a little bit after, cling on to them for dear life. It's so important and so rare to find these mentors because they can fast track you 10 years into the future with all their knowledge. Courses online are great and these biographies, books are great, but at the end of the day, what will really move you forward is finding that mentor, that in real life person that will help you and wants to help you accomplish your own dreams. And it's just really good to have this mentor who can get you past problems and who you can bounce ideas off of, and this group of people around you who's pushing you forward in the best way possible. I also love that on weekends they would sometimes play ping pong, because my office has a ping pong table and me and my office mate are absolutely obsessed. We just, every time we get a little dazed, we just look behind and we're like, ping pong? Yeah, okay. And then we go play ping pong, and I just love that we have that in common with Sam Walton. In this time of Sam's life, it's also when he finds his spouse. And he actually found her at a bowling place. Apparently she was bowling with her friend, and Sam was there and started talking to him. He actually says, when Helen and I met and I started courting her, I just fell right in love. She was pretty and smart and educated, ambitious and opinionated and strong-willed, with ideas and plans of her own. Also, like me, she was an athlete who loved the outdoors, and she had lots of energy. And then Helen has this quote, and she says, I also told my mother and dad that I was going to marry someone who had that special energy and drive, that desire to be a success. I certainly found what I was looking for, but now I laugh sometimes and say maybe I overshot a little. Wow, so that's just really beautiful, and I really love that. David Senra has this quote where he talks about, for people who want to achieve greatness, you have to either have a supportive spouse or no spouse at all. And I find it interesting because Helen was obviously very supportive, and her and Sam Walton stayed in it for the long run. They were married for the long run. And part of the reason that they were able to get through all the hard times in their life was because they were both very driven, and they were both very supportive of each other with all their endeavors, even when they had disagreements. And so for a lot of great people, since you kind of can't separate yourself from your work, you need a spouse that's supportive of your work, because it's just part of the package. It's very important to find someone who's compatible for you and also for what you want to do in your life. Sam found this person, and I don't think he would be in the same place without her. They just made a really good team. They were both all in at Walmart, and they both just supported each other like crazy. And I think this relationship that Sam had with Helen is definitely one to think about modeling yours after. So anyway, he's at JCPenney for a while, and eventually he decides that he wants to own his own store. He doesn't want to work for someone else anymore. And so this is how he goes about doing that. He says, my only experience was the penny job, but I had a lot of confidence that I could be successful on my own. Our last Army posting was in Salt Lake City, and I went to the library there and checked out every book on retailing. So this is fantastic. Every great person in history seems to be a voracious reader. They're just this lifelong learner. They absorb information like crazy, and Sam is no exception to this. He checked out every book on retailing. There are countless stories of these great people of history, and they don't read books. They read shelves of books. And it's really this thirst for knowledge, this hunger to know more, that gives you that competitive advantage in the market, this just a knowing more. And so there's this phrase that goes, there could be $1 billion idea in a $20 book. And so you start to think about the investment of a $20 book with $1 billion idea, and you start to realize that just how valuable books are, how valuable knowledge and information is. And it's this information and knowledge that will drive your business forward. And so if you can think in terms of putting a value, a price on an idea, then you're able to buy knowledge. You're able to buy these ideas and the knowledge that will actually move you forward. And this is like a real life shortcut. And so Sam begins to start studying, and he eventually takes out a loan for a store in Newport, Arkansas. It was the Ben Franklin's franchise, and he says, I was 27 years old and full of confidence, but I didn't know the first thing about how to evaluate a proposition like this, so I jumped right in with both feet. I've always believed in goals, so I set myself one. I wanted my little Newport store to be the best, most profitable variety store in Arkansas within 5 years. I felt I had the talent to do it and that it could be done, and why not go for it? Set that as a goal and see if you can't achieve it. If it doesn't work, you've had fun trying. Wow, mind-blowing. There is so much in that. The first thing is that he jumped right in with both feet. He didn't go half in. He didn't maybe just try it out. He dived in head first, and this is what truly great people do. When they have an idea, they act on it immediately. So many people have analysis paralysis, where they come up with an idea and then they spend weeks and months on the marketing or the planning or the development, and they just eventually get lost in the planning process, and this eventually fizzles out because The market will eventually catch up. And so the thing you see with really great people is that they're so action oriented. They have an idea and they immediately begin to execute. And even if they fail, that failure leads to a lesson and a growth and a learning experience. And so it's this cycle of learning and failing and learning and failing and learning and failing. And that action in between that really drives the most of success. The second thing about this is the importance of setting goals for yourself. Sam's goal was insanely clear. It was insanely measurable and it had a time frame. So it pushed him to make it in that time frame. He wanted to be the best retail store in Arkansas, which is very measurable with numbers, and he wanted to do it in less than 5 years. So he has a time frame. And then the last thing about this quote is that he has fun while he does it. One of the biggest lies is that you need to be stressed to be successful. You don't need to be stressed to be successful. The founder of Beyond Candles told me recently, you should always be in a stressful situation, but never be stressed. And so this is kind of the situation that Sam was in. He was in a very stressful situation. He had a very high goal that he didn't know if he could reach, but he wasn't stressed. He didn't allow analysis paralysis to creep up. He didn't allow stress to creep up. He simply had a goal and he had fun while he worked at getting there. He says, it was a real blessing for me to be so green and ignorant because it was from that experience that I learned a lesson which has stuck with me through all those years. You can learn from everybody. I didn't just learn from reading every retail publication I could get my hands on. I probably learned most from studying what John Dunham was doing across the street. And so John Dunham is this guy who owns a retail store right across from Sam's own retail store, and he's eventually going to destroy this guy pretty much. But they're going to build a very good relationship, and Sam's actually going to help him out at another point. But I really love this section of the book because it was Sam's first store, and he just did what every great person throughout history has done. He dived in head first. He had full confidence in himself. He looked for mentors who could help him. He read every publication he could about this topic. He just did everything right in a way. And it still ended up in a failure, but that failure was also right in a way because it led to the biggest growth that he could possibly imagine. I don't know, there's something so inspiring about that first try, about that naiveness of thinking that you can do anything. Who's to say that you can't do anything? Who's to say that you can't? The only reason innovation is a thing is because people are doing things that no one has ever done before. They're doing things that people think are not possible. If I told an auditorium full of people that we're going to be interstellar in the next 10 years, I'm sure I would get a ton of looks, maybe a couple comments here and there, but who's to say that we can't be interstellar in 10 years if someone truly dedicates their life and their mind to it? It's these crazy quacks, nuts, just these crazy people who change history for the better, who have these big ideas and who have this utmost 100% belief and confidence in themselves that change the world. So if you have an idea and you think that it's possible and no one believes in you, do it anyway. Try and fail, and then fail again, and then fail again, because that's where growth happens. And at the end of the day, it's repeating this pattern over and over again that literally characterizes success. Sam is also a very unique person. He's definitely one of these crazy people, and he's always trying new things. He's very eccentric, and this is kind of what makes his store a success. He says, as good as business was, I could never leave well enough alone. And in fact, I think my constant fiddling and meddling with the status quo may have been one of my biggest contributors to the later success of Walmart. Wow. One of the biggest contributors was literally the fact that good enough is not good enough. You must strive to achieve perfection. And even if you miss the mark, you're still that much closer to it. One of these crazy ideas was putting an ice cream machine in front of the store to attract more people. And this is one of the crazy ideas that actually worked. It was actually one of the most popular hits in town. And so Sam actually believed in this ice cream idea so much that he took out a loan for the ice cream machine just so he could have it in front of the store. And this attracted a huge crowds of people, lots of people there for ice cream, and then they just went in the store to buy stuff afterwards. And so you can see it's by trying these new things, by trying these kind of crazy things in a way that led to Sam's success. It's this ice cream machine, this uniqueness that's attracting people to his store. So another thing Sam is completely crazy about is controlling expenses. Sam is an absolute freak about this, and it's probably another one of his biggest reasons for his success. He says, every crazy thing we tried hadn't turned out as well as the ice cream machine, of course, but we hadn't made any mistakes we couldn't correct quickly, none so big that they threatened the business. And so the reason that they were able to take these risks, these kind of crazy ventures like the ice cream machine, and the reason they were able to try and fail was because they kept their costs low. Their expenses were extremely low, and so they could have that risk. They could have that thing where they could try anything. And it's these new ideas, these risks, that made them better than the other stores. See how it's all kind of connected together in business? His brother says, "We had to keep expenses to a minimum. That is where it started years ago. Money was made by controlling expenses. That and Sam always being ingenious. He never stopped trying to do something different." And so it's controlling expenses plus Sam's tinkering that made his store great. Pretty soon, they became the #1 Ben Franklin in all of Arkansas. However, this is when the story goes south for a little bit. And this is probably one of the harder ones to look at because Sam got his store taken away from him just simply by not looking at the fine print of some legal document. Pretty much what happened was that his lease was coming up. However, in the lease, there was no clause for him to do an extension for another years. So after his lease ran up, he didn't have the option to continue renting the store. And so his landlord saw how profitable the store was. He saw how good Sam was doing, and he didn't end up renewing the lease. So Sam was forced to sell his success. He says, "It was the low point of my business life. I felt sick to my stomach. I couldn't believe it was happening to me. It really was like a nightmare. I had built the best variety store in the whole region and worked hard in the community, done everything right, and now I was being kicked out of town. It didn't seem fair. I blamed myself for getting suckered into such an awful lease, and I was furious at the landlord. I've never been one to dwell on reverses, and I didn't do so then. It's not just a corny saying that you can make a positive out of most any negative if you work hard at it enough. I've always thought of problems as challenges, and this one wasn't any different. I had to pick myself up and get on with it, and do it all over again. Only better this time." Wow, so how powerful is that? How powerful are these stories, these human triumph stories, where they get everything taken away from them, and yet they still manage to put a positive spin on it? You read some of the stories from Auschwitz, which was a Nazi concentration camp for Jewish people. And even in some of those biographies, these people were undergoing the worst possible torture imaginable, and yet they somehow put a positive spin on it. These stories of human triumph are food for the soul. They are motivation for the hungry. They are uplifting the people who need to be uplifted. It's things like this that make or break you. Sam had his entire success ripped away from him, his entire store just gone in an instant. And yet he managed to come back and build one of the largest retail stores in the world. I mean, it's just mind-blowing to even have the strength to pick yourself back up after that, after getting screwed over so bad. And you can tell that he was struggling to do that. He says, "I couldn't believe it was happening to me. It was like a nightmare." And yet he knew that he had to do it all over again. And he did, but better. So let's go over that part of the story and what will eventually lead to Walmart. So he starts looking for another store, and he starts up a store called Sam's Five and Dime, which was really just a Ben Franklin's franchise, but just in disguise. And Sam does really well with the store, just like he did with the other store. And so I think now is a good time to see how other people describe him, how other people see him during this time, because it's so interesting to me how he really did just pick himself up and he started working again and just having fun with his new store. And yeah, let's go over what other people say about him. And Says 3, one of the clerks, said, "I guess Mr. Walton just had a personality that drew people in. He would yell at you from a block away, you know. He would just yell at everybody he saw. And that's the reason so many liked him and did business in the store. It was like he brought in business by his being so friendly." So again, you see that college Sam coming up again, where he's just friendly to everyone. He smiles at everyone. He talks to everyone in his store, and he's really just being a good person. He's building relationships, and relationships are transactional in a way, and business is made up of relationships. So if you're good at relationships, you can automatically, in a way, be good at business. And Sam was. So he was. Willard Walker, who was one of the first managers, says, "Sam was down there every day from the time we started until the time we left. He rolled up his sleeves and worked every day until we built that store from scratch." And so here you see these obsessionists again, and you see the work ethic that these founders and entrepreneurs have in the beginning, where they're working constantly. They're working way harder than their employees to show and motivate their employees that they actually care about this project. And then you have David Glass, who says, "Two things about Sam Walton distinguished him from almost everyone else I know. First, he gets up every day bound and determined to improve something. Second, he is less afraid of being wrong than anyone I've ever known. And once he sees he's wrong, he just shakes it off and heads in another direction." Whoa. everything about Sam Walton's character in that little tiny quote. He is less afraid of being wrong than anyone else I've ever known. And this goes back to not getting stuck in analysis paralysis. Take action, do something crazy, and then fix it later if it goes wrong. But it could go great. If the downside is mitigated and the upside is unlimited, then always take that risk, because you can always come back from that downside, but the potential is infinite. Sam always took these risks. If he was wrong, he would shake his head and move on to the next thing. But it's these risks, this eccentricity that made Sam great, that made his stores great with him. These things about Sam Walton, it's what made him great. And he started opening up stores everywhere in Arkansas and in Kansas. And eventually he had so many stores that it was taking too much time for him to actually drive to all these stores and see how things are going. So he ends up buying a small plane, which barely flew. It's a whole thing with him and his brother where his brother wouldn't get into the plane. But he buys this plane, he gets his license, and he begins flying to these stores. This is actually something that he would do when he's older as well, where he'll fly over the Walmart in a plane and just look over the surrounding areas, and he'll look over the Walmart buildings. And he would do this for his whole life. But this habit started when he was just building up his stores in Arkansas and Kansas. Sam also begins traveling a lot. And while he's traveling, he's always studying the competition. There are so many stories with his kids where his kids are always talking about how every time they would go on a road trip, Sam, their dad, would stop by every retail store on the way and every retail store on the way back as well. And so he would spend like an hour or so in these stores just studying everything about these retail stores. There's another story of this guy who saw Sam Walton in his store, and Sam was on the ground measuring the distance between shelves to try and figure out what the distance was because he thought it was nice or something. I don't know. But it's this obsession, this drive to know everything about your competition, to know everything about your own business. And it's this drive that really drew Sam Walton to the top. At a certain point, he comes across this store that is charging just insanely low prices. And so he's trying to figure out how they were able to do that. And the way the store was able to do it is they bought in extremely large quantities, and then they just barely marked up the item. So most stores around them had like a 20% markup on every item. So let's say you buy a piece of soap from the manufacturer for $1, and then you sold every piece of soap for $1.20. That's a 20% markup. And then suddenly come these new stores, and they buy a ton, way more quantity of soap, but they also charge way less, perhaps $1.05. And so this new model of doing business was called discounting. This is the rise of the discounting store. Sam says, we really had only two choices left: stay in the variety store business, which I knew was going to be hit hard by the discounting wave of the future, or open a discounting store. Of course, I wasn't about to sit there and become a target. And so another thing that a lot of great people have is a vision of the future. The best example would be Steve Jobs. Steve Jobs knew that there would be a world where everyone had a computer and everyone would have to work on their computer. And so he made a computer that everyone could use. He had a vision of the future, and this vision guided with actions which ended up creating that future. And so you see the same thing happening with Sam Walton, where he sees these discount stores, he knows discount stores are the future, and his actions lead towards that future. Studying these stores, studying his competition is what led to the first ever Walmart. After this, most of you know the story from there. You know the story of how Walmart grew from these small towns, how Walmart took over the smaller towns. They just charged lower, they had the best customer service, all these qualities that every business displays. But I think the story from there is pretty self-explanatory, mostly good business practice. But as this episode is already running a bit long, I think I just want to go over these rules that Sam has. At the end of Sam's book, he goes over 10 rules that he feels were most useful for him in his life and running these Walmart stores since the beginning. And I'm not going to go over all of them, but I want to go out the ones that I think most stand out. Rule 1, commit to your business. Believe in it more than anybody else. I think I overcame every single one of my personal shortcomings by the sheer passion I brought to my work. I don't know if you're born with this kind of passion or if you can learn it, but I do know you need it. If you love your work, you'll be out there every day trying to do the best you possibly can. And pretty soon, everybody around will catch the passion from you like a fever. Wow. Absolutely fantastic. And this is sort of what I was talking before, where you have to believe in yourself more than anyone else believes in you. And belief is a contagious thing. Let's go back to that interstellar analogy. I hope that there is someone out there who believes that we can be interstellar in 10 years and is so unbelievably confident in themselves and their abilities to make humanity interstellar that it just contagious the people around them. And so suddenly you have this group of people who have a virus to make humanity interstellar. And that virus becomes a reality. Sam had this vision of Walmart and taking discounting into the future with Walmart. And so he's so excited and passionate about this idea. He works every single day from wake up to the time he goes to sleep. And because he believes in this idea so much, because he has this vision, the people around him are willing to work just as hard. And so it's this passion and this love for what you do that's contagious for the people around you. And the more you have of that, the more your employees are going to work, the more the people around you are going to want to help you, and just the more success you'll have in life in general. Rule 2. Share your profits with all your associates and treat them as partners. In turn, they'll treat you as a partner, and together you will all perform beyond your wildest expectations. Remain a corporation and remain control if you like, but behave as a servant leader in a partnership. Encourage your associates to hold a stake in your company. Offer discounted stock and grant them stock for their retirement. It's the single best thing we ever did. So the single best thing Walmart ever did was make their employees associates. And I think this is actually a really powerful concept because you don't even see this a lot, too much these days, at least. Of course, Walmart came up with this idea of not calling their employees, but calling them associates, partners. And they made them real partners because they gave them discounted price of their stock. And so when you think about it, their employees work hard because they have a stock in the company and they want to grow it. They want to grow it because it benefits them and the company. And so I like this idea of giving someone a piece of the pie as long as they help grow the pie. People, of course, are going to work harder if they know that what benefits you will also benefit them. And I think this is a really good way to do that and a really good way to encourage your employees to work harder, to just give them a piece of the pie because they're part of it. So why shouldn't they have some? Rule 6, celebrate your successes, find some humor in your failures, don't take yourself so seriously, loosen up and everyone around you will loosen up. Have fun, show enthusiasm always, when all else fails, put on a costume and sing a silly song. Then make everybody else sing with you. Don't do a hula on Wall Street. It's been done. Think up your own stunt. All of this is more important and more fun than you think and really fools the competition. Why should we take these cornballs at Walmart seriously? And so, of course, he's referring that when Walmart was first starting up, they were in these little towns and they were outside of the big cities and everyone just kind of overlooked them. They thought, oh, Walmart, they're just those farmers out there in these little small towns. And eventually Walmart did go into the big towns and they did compete with the big guys and they won. Everyone underestimated them, and they won. And so they did this by following these simple principles of having the best customer service, of having the lowest prices, and of keeping their costs insanely low. And I like this idea of celebrate your successes and finding humor in your failures. This is one of the reasons I like reading biography so much, because when you study the lives of, yes, great people, but also really anyone, when you read a biography, you're studying their entire life. You're seeing decades and decades and decades, and you sort of see the big picture. And when you're looking at the big picture, you're able to laugh at mistakes that they made in the smaller picture. I'm sure that Sam, in the moment, felt like the world was collapsing when his store got taken away from him. But when you read the biography, it actually turns out to be an incredible, beautiful triumph story. And so you're able to laugh at that when you're older. And so if in the future you're going to look back at your experiences and be grateful, then why not just be grateful in the moment, even during hard times? Have some fun, make some jokes, do a silly dance like Sam Walton did, and just keep moving, keep working, and keep striving for the best possible outcome that you can. What happens after that is none of your control, so you don't have to worry about it. Rule 7, listen to everyone in your company and figure out ways to get them talking. The folks on the front lines, the ones who actually talk to the customer, are the only ones who really know what's going on out there. You'd better find out what they know. This really is what total quality is about. And that's really powerful. And it reminds me of the story of Sam Zimuri, who was CEO of the United Fruit Company at one point. and he was constantly talking about how it's so important to be on the front lines. And he mostly sold bananas, and he was constantly in Guatemala studying how the bananas were picked, how people were picking them, how they were being transported on the boats. And because of this, because he talked to the workers, because he was on the front lines, he knew everything about his business. And he would laugh at the other companies who were at their big offices in New York while their bananas were being transported all from South America. And so you see this with Sam Walton. Sam Walton is constantly in his competitive retail stores. He's constantly checking on his own stores. He's flying from store to store to store and checking the books and the numbers constantly. Sam talks to every worker that he sees, and he's constantly on the front lines so that he can know everything about his business. And if you can just do this, you will be able to beat any of the competition. Rule 9, control your expenses better than your competition. This is where you can always find the competitive advantage. For 25 years running, long before Walmart was known as the nation's largest retailer, we ranked number 1 in our industry for the lowest ratio of expenses to sales. You can make a lot of different mistakes and still recover if you run an efficient operation, or you can be brilliant and still go out of business if you're too inefficient. Wow, so this is great. Most businesses go bankrupt because they run out of money. And so how can you run out of money if you keep your costs and expenses insanely low? This is, in my opinion, the key to success in every business. If you can just stop overspending, if you can end the endless meetings, if you can end the bureaucracy and just actually do work that people like for a low price, then that's the best thing that you can offer the market. Even before Walmart was the largest retail store in the world, they had the lowest expenses, and this was one of the reasons they were able to rise so fast. And he again talks about how this was what allowed him to take risks. This was what allowed him to try new things. And it's that trying new things that gives you the competitive advantage. And it would not be possible if you don't have a low cost structure. And another reason why Sam was able to have such a low cost structure is because he was in the weeds of the business constantly. He was constantly looking at the books. He was constantly looking at the numbers. He was completely obsessed with this business, and it allowed him to keep his costs insanely low. And finally, rule 10, swim upstream. Go the other way, ignore the conventional wisdom. If everybody else is doing it one way, there's a good chance you can find your niche by going in the exact opposite direction. But be prepared for a lot of folks to wave you down and tell you you're headed the wrong way. I guess in all my years, what I heard more often than anything was a town of less than 50,000 population cannot support a discount store for very long. So at the end of the day, it's this newness and this eccentricness that will really lead you to blow up over all the followers in a way. It's uncomfortable to do something different than the rest of the world. It's uncomfortable to be different, to act different, to choose a path that not very many people take. But it's only by doing this that allows you to be successful, because it makes you unique. It makes you one of a kind. And while most people are striving to be the same, to be one of a kind is truly a gift. Sam was one of a kind. That's why he had an ice cream machine in front of his store. That's why he had a donkey ride in front of his first Walmart. Sam had these crazy, unique ideas, and he implemented them. Some worked, some didn't. But every single one of those was showing people that this store, that this person was special. And so if you can use that eccentricness, if you can use that uniqueness, that new spark of innovation, then it'll give you a competitive edge over anyone who you're trying to compete with. Those are some pretty ordinary rules. Some would even say simplistic. The hard part, the real challenge, is constantly figuring out ways to execute them. You can't just keep doing what works one time, because everything around you is always changing. To succeed, you have to stay out in front of that change. And so he just expands more on that right there. And that leads us to the end of the biography. Sam was unique, he was eccentric, but at the same time, he was the same as everyone else. He was simple and he was humble. He made every employee at Walmart an associate because he wanted everyone to benefit from growing the pie. And it's so weird to see all of these characteristics in one person. This competitive drive while at the same time having a gentleness to you, a hunger to win while at the same time wanting to make the world a better place. I think at the end of the day, it's this that made Sam so special. This combination of so many great characteristics that make you great while at the same time helping the community. And in this way, Sam has changed entrepreneurship forever. He's changed the retailing world forever. And for the people that read this book, I think it will change their lives forever. And so I want to end with this quote that Sam says in his book, where he talks about and motivates people to achieve their dreams, to accomplish their goals in life. He says, finally, a lot of folks ask me two related questions all the time. The first one is, could a Walmart-type story still occur in this day and age? My answer is, of course it could happen again. Somewhere out there right now, there's someone, probably hundreds of thousands of someones, with good enough ideas to go all the way. It will be done again, over and over, providing that someone wants it badly enough to do what it takes to get there. It's all a matter of attitude and the capacity to constantly study and question the management of the business. Anyway, the next time someone overeager, slightly eccentric shopkeeper opens up a business in your neck of the woods, before you write him off too quickly, remember those two old coggers who gave me maybe 60 days to last in my dime store down in Fayetteville. Go check the new store out. See what they've got to offer. See how they treat you, and decide for yourself if you ever want to go back. Because this is what it's really all about. In this free country of ours, that shopkeeper success is entirely up to you, the customer. And that is the biography of Sam Walton. Thank you all for watching that episode. And I want to hear your thoughts in the comments. I want to hear what more you want to hear about, what you want out of this podcast, and what you want out of this community of people aspiring to be great, this community of people who want to make history. So yeah, I think that's it.
Life can be much broader once you discover one simple fact.
I've lost my mind on this game, yeah. Like Vincent Van Gogh.
Every set that I did and more weights that I lifted, I get one step closer to turning that vision into reality.
Offer me money, offer me power. I don't care.
Dedicated his life to his art and lost his mind in the process.
Because everything around you that you call life was made up by people that were no smarter than you.
This video is sponsored by Just kidding. I am not sponsored, but I'm open to sponsorship. So if you're watching this, sponsor me. See, even literally Sydney Sweeney. Do you see this? Sydney Sweeney sponsored by Bye. If you're sponsoring Sydney Sweeney, sponsor Nick Munoz. Come on. I'm right here. I love your drink. I drink it a lot, way too much. But there's no such thing as too much buy. So literally sponsor me. Okay, anyway, bye.